Welcome back, all you lovely people. I hope you had a good snack there, and now we can continue on with our discussion of the ethics of care. So in that last video, we have seen these here, there they are, those two moral perspectives, the ethics of justice that comes from Lawrence Kohlberg and the ethics of care that comes from Carol Gilligan. So a couple different perspectives about ethics there. And now recall that the ethics of justice holds that morality is primarily understood in terms of rules that specify obligations and rights, while ordering these obligations and rights by their relative importance when they conflict. And so what we saw then is that both Kohlberg and Gilligan tend to think that that's a very masculine ethics there of justice. Okay, so that's it. Then on the other hand, we have, again, the ethics of care, which holds that, well, these three elements that we've seen, right? Maintaining personal relationships, kindness and beneficence, and then sensitivity to one's own needs and the special needs of others. And as we've seen, Carol Gilligan and, definitely thinks this is like a feminine view of ethics. And so now some feminist thinkers do like this idea. They and Jean Grimshaw mentions why that might be. She, it's that a female ethic, right, is something that very well might save society, right? These feminists think that society has historically been dominated by a masculine ethics, and this masculinity has become toxic with all sorts of problems of aggression and competition. And so we need to listen to women and their feminine ethics, which could transform society in very good ways. However, if you paid attention to Jean Grimshaw, she is not too enthusiastic. She seems rather skeptical about this. Indeed, she seems to think that there is no truly feminine ethics at all. And she even thinks that trying to promote a feminine ethics could actually be quite harmful. And so I want to walk through why she might think that. Again, why she thinks, in all honesty, she thinks the idea of a feminine ethics is incoherent. And she says by trying to even enforce or conceive of a female ethic, this could actually be quite dangerous and harmful. It's quite interesting how she does this. Because remember, she is a feminist. Jean Grimshaw is taking a feminist analysis here. So she is challenging other feminists who do like the ethics of care. And we'll go into why that is. Now, she starts out this article, Jean Grimshaw, by talking about what she calls essentialist feminism. Now, according to this essentialism, biological males and females have different natures. That's just natural. They are different. And these natures, that affects their behavior as well as their outlook on the world. So you have males, biological males, who are naturally competitive, aggressive, and destructive, whereas you have biological females who are naturally cooperative, gentle, and nurturing. Now, yeah, feminists might like this idea because it means that women can save the world, because women will naturally protect everyone with their kind, gentle, nurturing natures, unlike the men whose competition and aggression seem hell-bent on destroying the planet. That might make this essentialism attractive to feminists. Women can save the day, I guess. But essentialism is pretty controversial, to say the least. After all, it's very difficult to prove this. Jean Grimshaw mentions this repeatedly throughout her article, how difficult it is to prove that there are just essential differences between males and females. Because how do you show that this behavior you're describing is natural and not simply the product of social expectations? And that is, of course, as you guys might have guessed, is pretty tough to show. I mean, and I really don't want to go down that rabbit hole of is this nature or is this nurture? I've seen a few of you already tweeting about that, so that's interesting. It always comes up. We don't want to get settled in that, but it is worth noting that most contemporary feminists reject essentialism. They don't like this essentialism because they see it as a tool for controlling and suppressing people. Because if a woman tries to be aggressive and assertive, people often will call that woman the B word or worse, implying that woman should be more caring and docile. And that's what nature intended, right? If you're an essentialist, a woman should be kind and caring. And the minute you encounter a woman who doesn't do that, well, she's a beep and should be treated accordingly. Got to whip them into shape. But also it's worth noting that essentialism can be bad for men as well, because this can be used to create and enforce toxic masculinity. Because if a man shows that he is kind and caring to others, well, he might be thought of as pathetic and weak. Is whipped the word that's used these days, whatever you young people say. But again, a caring man is thought to be unnatural and abnormal as well. And so, yeah, essentialism, on the one hand, difficult to prove, and on the other hand, can be used to suppress and control people who are different. And that, I think, is why most feminists reject those two reasons. Hard to prove, used as a tool to control. That's, I think, why feminists tend to reject essentialism. That is, they tend to think talking about natural differences between male and females doesn't seem to get us very far. And even so, suppose that's true. The feminists now reject essentialism. But how can there then be a feminine or female ethics if females aren't naturally different from males? Where's it going to come from, right? Because if naturally the differences, and even you might note, Rachel's, that reading does mention that the difference is biologically seem to be small. They did a lot of studies, and you find some things, but they don't seem to be as big as some people might like to think. Anyway, so again, though, if there aren't these big biological natural differences between males and females, why can we say there's a female ethic, right? What's it gonna be about? And so what some feminists might argue is that, and then Jean Grisham notes this as well in her reading, or Grimshaw, excuse me. She notes that men and women occupy different spheres of experience and different spheres of activities. That is, traditionally, men participate more in the public sphere of the market and politics, while women participate more in the private sphere of the home. And furthermore, biological females can get pregnant, give birth, and physically nurse a newborn baby. Those are pretty unique experiences, which might suggest that women could have a different perspective on human life. I mean, Grimshaw mentions that more women might be against war because these women see dead children whose lives have been wasted. Because again, they get pregnant, they give birth, they nurse the child. Now, in any case, the idea that's going on here is that ethical priorities emerge from one's life experiences. And traditionally, women seem to have had very different life experiences than for men. And so then women will have different values than men. And so women and men will reason differently about morality, not because of their biology, but because of the different life experiences that they've had. And of course, a feminist would be quite clear on this point that women's experiences are valuable in themselves, and women's experiences should not, I repeat, should not be seen as inferior or subordinate to the experiences of men. Separate but equal, I guess. And I say that, of course, if you know your history of racial segregation, you will know that separate but equal is probably not the best idea for morality. And that actually is Jean Grimshaw's point. Because Jean Grimshaw is willing to grant that if you have different life experiences, yeah, your views about morality will probably be influenced by that. But she thinks to then say that there's a female ethics because women have different experiences than men. She thinks this is really going to be, as I said earlier, both incoherent and dangerous. Now, why is it incoherent? Because, as Jean Grimshaw notes quite obviously, some women choose not to have children. Some women choose to have a career. Some women choose to go into politics. Now, I hope we all agree there is nothing wrong with a woman deciding not to have children. There's nothing wrong with a woman deciding not, to have a career, and there's nothing wrong with a woman choosing to enter politics. Indeed, my wife has done all three, so we'll have words if you don't like that. But all this means is that women will have different experiences. Women are not a monolith who all have the same bloody life experiences. There are similarities without doubt, well beyond this course to talk about that. But certainly they don't seem to have the same identical experiences that are sufficient to give rise to this ethics of care or this feminine ethics. Because of course, men also could have these feminine experiences of, say, raising children and caring about them. And so those men could themselves develop a female or a feminine ethics. And so again, I think Grimshaw is okay with saying that your experiences will shape your perspectives on morality. And there are, yes, many different possible experiences and perspectives on morality that a person might arrive at, because of their different experiences. But Grimshaw's beef is saying that some of these perspectives are feminine while others are masculine. She doesn't like that kind of reductive labeling of, oh, well, these experiences are for the women and these experiences are for the men. Because again, plenty of men and plenty of women will share similar experiences. And so she just doesn't like putting the gender label onto that. She thinks that isn't really meaningful, and that might not even be, coherent, because it's not feminine if men are equally as capable of experiencing it. And it's not masculine if women are as equally capable of experiencing it. So that's the first problem. It's incoherent because some women, a feminine ethics is incoherent because plenty of women will not have it and plenty of men will have it. And I'm sure you can find that out for yourself. So again, different experiences, different ethics, that is fine. But labeling it with gendered language, it makes Jean, she's not my friend, makes Grimshaw very uncomfortable. And so that's the first thing, incoherent. But the second, even more importantly, and this is what she spends even more time on, is that she thinks this is dangerous. Labeling certain ethics masculine, certain ethics as feminine is dangerous. And I'll use an example to illustrate this. Now, suppose a man has a sick mother, and he chooses to hire someone to look after, his sick mother, while he spends most of his time running to become president of the United States. Now, I suspect no one has any issues with that. No one, during the campaign, no one might even comment on it, except, oh, his poor sick mother. But no one would comment, oh, he's hired someone to take care of it while he runs for president. Now, compare that to a woman with a sick mother, and she also chooses to hire someone to look after her mother, while she spends most of her time running to become president of the United States. Now, I suspect that there would be people that would have a problem with that because she doesn't seem to be showing her mother proper care. And I'm willing to bet $1 million that her political opponent would be glad to use that against her. Say, oh, she's just hiring some random person to take care of her mother. She should be taking at home caring. And that is what Grimshaw is worried about, how a female ethics, how a feminine ethics, how an ethics of care can then be used against women who choose not to act according to that ethics of care. They're seen as they're not being a woman. They should be doing the woman ethics. Because she notes throughout her article, historically, that is what happened. Historically, separate does not become equal. Separate becomes coercion and control, forcing women into that ethics of care, into those caring roles. And of course, this could be equal problems for men who also choose to act according to an ethics of care. And again, we're back to the problems of toxic masculinity, men being forced to be masculine. You should be out working. You shouldn't be at home taking care of your sick mother. And so again, in short, Grimshaw thinks that an ethics of care could be used to reinforce gender norms, where men must adopt certain masculine ethics of individualism and competitiveness, whereas women are expected to adopt certain feminine ethics of self-sacrifice and cooperativeness. Now, I won't go any further into that. I think that's very much enough to give you a sense of what is going on in Jean Grimshaw's article. And I'll just say, as like kind of just an appendix or an add-on, that I do teach a course here at UB on social philosophy. And in that class, we do read a few chapters from a very recent book by Kate Manne. This book is called Down Girl. It's a very interesting book, to say the least. And it does talk about how social norms and expectations can then be used to reinforce gender norms. So if what we've been talking about in this video is something you're interested in, you should really check out that book. You might like it. But anyhow, it's a little side note there. We can now see why feminists like Grimshaw are not excited about the ethics of care, because it can be used to reinforce gender norms. Actually, let me rephrase that. They're not excited about calling an ethics of care a feminine ethics. They might be okay with, caring about, caring as an ethical important thing, and those things are, personal relationships, kindness. They would probably agree these are important. They just don't like it being labeled as exclusively feminine. Because then that's a way for social coercion to force women into roles as caregivers and to discourage then women and young girls from becoming more, getting jobs and going into positions of power and leadership. But again, I think we'll see something more positive that we can pull out of Jean Grimshaw's article as well, because I think it's not all just negative. Because again, it's mainly about labeling it as feminine. The ethics itself isn't problematic. It's just making it female. But before we go into the more positive aspects, let's take one last quick break. This is give you the good break to rest your eyes. I know, stretch your legs, and then we can come back and wrap up this module on the ethics of care. See you back in a moment.